Every one of the 6 people in this video had a chance. A gun in a holster, bear spray on a hip, a rifle somewhere in the camp. They were prepared, experienced, and in country they knew. That is what makes these cases different from most. The equipment existed. The knowledge existed. The outcome happened anyway. Because in the 2 seconds a grizzly needs to cover 40 yards, the difference between surviving and not is not whether you have a defense. It is whether you can reach it. 6 cases. 6 different decisions made before the bear appeared. 6 different answers to the same question. When the moment came, was the thing that was supposed to save you actually in your hand? Mark Uptain set his 10mm Glock in the brush while he helped field dress the elk. He did not pick it up again before the grizzly came through the timber. He was dead by the end of that afternoon. He was 37 years old, a father of 5, and one of the most experienced hunting guides operating in the Bridger-Teton National Forest. The rest of this story explains how that decision happened. Not because it was stupid, because it was September 14th, 2018, and they were deep in elk country northeast of Jackson Hole, and everything that led up to that moment made perfect sense at the time. Corey Chubon was a bow hunter from Florida. He had hired Mark Uptain and Martin Outfitters to guide him into the Bridger-Teton backcountry for elk. Chubon connected with an elk the previous afternoon, a Thursday, but the light was fading and they couldn't track the animal far enough to recover it before dark. They left it. That is standard practice. You come back the next morning, or in this case, the next afternoon. They returned Friday. They found the elk carcass in the timber. The animal had lain there through a September night, cooling, leaching blood and gut contents into the ground. That smell carries in elk country. It carries for miles. Everything with a nose in the Bridger-Teton backcountry knows what that smell means. Uptain and Chubon began the work of field dressing the elk. It is physical, close work. It requires both hands. Uptain was wearing a shoulder holster with a 10mm Glock. At some point during the field dressing, he took the holster off. The investigators who reconstructed the scene afterward found the Glock lying apart from the shoulder holster. The magazine had been dropped somewhere else entirely. There was no round in the chamber. The gun was not fired as a defense against the attacking grizzly bears, said Wyoming Game and Fish Regional Wildlife Supervisor Brad Hovinga. He couldn't make the gun work. The bear, a grizzly sow, came out of the thick timber attracted by the scent of the elk. She had a yearling male with her. She hit Uptain first. Chubon went for the Glock. He could not get around to chamber. He attempted to throw the handgun to Uptain. It did not reach him. The 2 bears were between them by then. A spent bear spray canister was found 5 feet from Uptain's remains. Wildlife investigators concluded that the fatal injuries had already occurred before he was able to deploy it. He had bear spray in an accessible hip holster. He never got to it. Chubon survived. Bear spray repelled the sow on a second attack on him. That is the functional difference between this incident and a double fatality. What the Bridger-Teton looks like on a September afternoon. Lodgepole pine thickets dense enough that you can hear water but not see it 20 yards away. Deadfall. The smell of elk blood sharp in the cool air. Flies already working the carcass. It is the kind of cover where a 400-pound animal moves in silence until it doesn't. The sow and the yearling didn't announce themselves. That is not how grizzlies work a carcass site. They approach, they assess. When they decide to move, they move at a speed most people cannot process as real until it's already done. Investigators confirmed through forensic and DNA analysis that the sow and the yearling were the 2 bears involved. Conservation officers trapped the yearling in the vicinity. When they returned to the area, an adult sow charged them, the same female. They were forced to shoot her. The yearling was later euthanized. The Wyoming Occupational Safety and Health Administration reviewed the incident and issued a formal recommendation. Martin Outfitters should evaluate its procedures for bear country. The specific language in their alert: carry a defense readily accessible. The knowledge of how to use your defense should be automatic. That is what the gun represented in this case. Not an absence of preparation. The opposite. Uptain was armed, had bear spray, had decades of experience in this country. The Glock was there. But a shoulder holster removed during close physical work and set in the brush is not a defense. It is a tool that used to be in reach. Medical findings and aftermath. The official investigation confirmed that Mark Uptain's fatal injuries were inflicted by the initial attack before he was able to deploy any defensive measure. The pattern of wounds was consistent with a high-force, rapid mauling. Bites and claw strikes concentrated on the torso and neck. The areas a grizzly targets in the first seconds of an attack when the human has not yet gone down. A grizzly sow in a predatory or carcass defense state hits with full weight. Females in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem average 250 to 350 pounds, and they strike with both forepaws and jaws in the same motion. Corey Chubon, the Florida hunter, sustained injuries that required treatment but survived. Bear spray was the instrument of his survival on the second attack. The grizzly broke off when the canister was deployed directly. Uptain left behind a wife and 5 children. A GoFundMe in his name raised over $208,000. Incident analysis. Human failures. There are 2 separate failures here, and they compound each other. First, the Glock was removed from its holster during field dressing and set aside without a round in the chamber. A firearm that cannot be fired in the 2 seconds of a grizzly charge is not a defense. It is weight in a holster. Second, the magazine was not retained with the firearm. When Chubon attempted to operate the gun under extreme stress, in a physical altercation with no prior familiarity with a Glock's manual of arms, the gun failed as a system. Not because it malfunctioned, because the system had already been disassembled by the people responsible for it. The Wyoming OSHA finding puts it plainly. Defensive equipment needs to be accessible, and its operation needs to be automatic. Neither condition existed at the moment the sow charged. Effective actions. Chubon deployed bear spray under extreme stress during a follow-up attack. It worked. That is the only reason this incident has a survivor. Bear spray had been in Uptain's holster in an accessible position. He simply didn't reach it in time. The sequence of events, Uptain hit first, Chubon going for the gun failing, compressed a sequence that would have needed bear spray deployment in the first second into something that had already passed the point of effective response. Practical takeaway. If you remove a firearm from its holster during any field task in bear country, you have just converted it from a defensive tool into a piece of gear. The moment the gun comes off your body, it needs a round in the chamber or it is functionally unloaded. That rule doesn't have exceptions for 10-minute jobs. It doesn't have exceptions for any job. Thousands of miles to the east, on the edge of suburban New Jersey, a different kind of bear was moving through second-growth timber, and the people who encountered it made the one mistake that triggers a black bear's pursuit instinct. The Apshawa Preserve in West Milford, New Jersey, is the kind of place that doesn't look like bear country from the road. Second-growth hardwoods, a trailhead with a parking lot, a few miles of paths through suburban woodland that backs up against the Pequannock watershed. On the afternoon of September 21st, 2014, the temperature was in the mid-60s Fahrenheit. The light through the canopy was the flat yellow of a northeastern fall. Somewhere in the trees, something was watching the trail. 5 friends from Rutgers University were walking that afternoon. Darsh Patel was 22 years old, a senior studying information technology and informatics from Howell Township. He was one of 5. None of them were carrying bear spray. None of them were carrying anything. This was a day hike in a public preserve inside one of the most densely populated states in the country. They encountered the bear on the trail, a male black bear, approximately 4 years old and 299 pounds. He did not run. He began to follow them. There is something important to understand about that behavior. A bear that follows a group of humans on a trail is not behaving defensively. It is not bluff charging, not protecting cubs, not reacting to a perceived threat. A bear that closes the distance behind a group of retreating humans has made a different calculation. It is testing. Whether consciously or not, it is reading the response to its presence and adjusting accordingly. The 5 friends took photographs of the bear with their cell phones. They were at approximately 15 feet when they began to run in different directions. The moment they ran, the dynamic shifted completely. Running from a bear triggers pursuit. This is not a complicated principle. It applies to grizzlies, brown bears, and black bears. And the physical mechanism is the same in all 3. A retreating target activates predatory tracking behavior. It does not matter that the people running were not intending to be prey. What matters is that running communicated vulnerability, separation, and directionality to an animal already following them. They scattered. The trail through the Apshawa Preserve is not a maintained park path. It moves through dense second growth with rock outcroppings and ridge lines. Patel's friends reported that they last saw him near a rock formation, calling to them to keep running, with the bear close behind. After 2 hours, West Milford police organized a search. They found Patel's body in the woods. The bear was 40 yards away, guarding the body. A West Milford police officer shot and killed the bear at the scene. DNA and forensic evidence confirmed it was the same male that had followed the group on the trail. What changed between a bear following 5 people and a bear standing over a body is a matter of a few seconds and one decision. The group ran. They separated. The bear pursued the one it could catch. Darsh Patel's friends survived by reaching their vehicle. Patel died in the woods alone, with the bear between him and any exit. The Apshawa Preserve bear was not a habitual predator. There was no record of prior aggression. He was a 4-year-old male in good body condition, almost certainly exploring his range in the weeks before the autumn denning period. What he was not, and what made him different from most bears encountered in that preserve, was willing to disengage when the humans did not stand their ground. Medical findings and aftermath. The injuries on Patel's body were consistent with a mauling. Bite and claw wounds indicating sustained contact. He had no defensive injuries to his hands or forearms that could be documented from the available reporting, which suggests the initial contact was rapid and the attack was brief. Medical examiners confirmed the cause of death as injuries from the bear attack. The bear showed no signs of disease or neurological abnormality on necropsy. He was in good health. This was not an aberrant animal. It was an animal that had been given a signal, retreating, separating prey, and had followed it. In the aftermath, New Jersey Fish and Wildlife noted that bear encounters in the state's northwestern counties had been increasing as the population recovered from decades of low numbers. The Apshawa Preserve sits in a corridor with documented bear movement. The issue was not the presence of bears. The issue was that 5 people walked into that corridor without knowing what to do when they met one. Incident analysis. Human failures. Running was the critical failure. Not encountering the bear, that was unavoidable. Not taking photographs, that was harmless. Running, and specifically running in separate directions, converted a tense but manageable encounter into a fatal one. A black bear that is following a group of upright, vocal, standing humans is in an exploratory state. The moment the group scattered, the animal received confirmation that one of them was alone and moving away. The outcome followed from that moment with no other input required. Effective actions. The 4 other members of the group reached safety. There is no documented evidence that they did anything specifically correct. The account suggests they ran and were not pursued. That could be a function of direction, terrain, or the fact that the bear had already focused on Patel. What did not happen, and this matters, is that no one attempted to go back. Under the circumstances, that was probably the right call. Returning into dense cover toward an active attack scene would have produced additional victims, not a rescue. Practical takeaway. When a bear follows you on a trail, the correct response is to stop, face it, make yourself large, make noise, and not run. Running does not accelerate your exit from the encounter. It accelerates the bears. In the mountains of Montana, just 2 years after Patel's death, a hunter with decades of backcountry experience, was about to learn what it means to be hit by the same grizzly sow twice in one morning. Todd Orr had 20 puncture wounds on his right arm and shoulder when he drove himself to the hospital. His left forearm was broken. 2 tendons in that arm were severed. The muscles were torn in a pattern that surgeons would later describe as consistent with the bite force of a large bear at close range. He had a 5-inch gash above his right ear where a jaw had closed across his skull. There were puncture wounds from teeth and claws on his back and waist that he had not felt during the attack itself. He was 50 years old, and he had hiked 3 miles out of the Madison Valley with all of that before he got behind the wheel. The attack happened on the morning of October 1st, 2016, near a trailhead in the Madison Valley southeast of Ennis, Montana. Orr was scouting for elk, a 15 to 20 mile loop he knew well. In country he had been walking for years. He carried bear spray. He carried a Rock Island Armory 10mm 1911 pistol with a 6-inch barrel in a shoulder holster. He had announced his presence on the trail. He had done the things experienced people do in this country. 3 miles in, he came around a bend into a meadow. The sow was 80 yards away, playing with her 2 cubs in the grass. She saw Orr the same moment he saw her. She ran west with the cubs, over a ridge, out of sight. Orr kept moving. He pulled the safety pin on his bear spray and held the canister ready. The sow came back over the ridge at 40 yards in a full charge, ears flat, body low to the ground. She covered the distance in a time that experienced people in that country describe the same way, consistently, faster than you can think. Orr deployed the bear spray when she was close. She came through the cloud. At 10 feet, she was still moving. He dropped to his stomach and covered the back of his neck and skull with his arms. She was on him for approximately 15 seconds. The bite sequence, right shoulder, right arm, repeated, is consistent with a sow running a rapid mauling on a prone target. When she finished, she left, not chased off, not deterred by anything. She simply stopped and departed back toward her cubs. Orr got up. He was bleeding from multiple wounds but functional. He began moving back down the trail toward the trailhead. He did not stop. He knew that stopping was not the right decision. He made it about 8 minutes. The sow came back over the ridge behind him. It happened so quickly that I had no time to use the bear spray again or reach for my pistol. That is his account, and it is precise. The second attack was faster than the first. By the time Orr registered the sound behind him and turned, she was within 10 feet. He went down again. This time, the attack was harder. She broke the left forearm. The holster straps tore under the force. When the attack ended, the 10mm pistol was lying 10 feet from his body, separated from the holster. He had never gotten a hand on it. She left a second time. Orr lay in the trail for a moment. Then he got up, bleeding from more wounds than he could count, holding the broken arm against his body, and walked 3 miles to his truck. He filmed a brief video at the trailhead documenting his condition. His voice was steady. He drove himself to the hospital. That composure is not accidental. It is the product of a very specific kind of experience, the kind that comes from years in a country where managing your own physical response to pain and shock is a basic survival skill, not an exceptional one. Orr knew that panic was the third attack. He didn't give it a chance. Medical findings and aftermath. The wound inventory, established by treatment. 20 puncture wounds to the right arm and shoulder. Bite depth consistent with full jaw closure. Broken left forearm, radial fracture. 2 severed tendons in the left arm. Significant nerve damage and muscle destruction in the left arm. A 5-inch scalp laceration above the right ear, which indicated a jaw had fully engaged the skull from above. Multiple puncture and claw wounds on the back and waist areas. Orr required surgery on both arms. The nerve damage in the left arm produced lasting functional deficits, the kind of injury that does not fully resolve. Bite wounds carry a substantial infection risk even when cleaned quickly. Grizzly bears are omnivores whose mouths carry bacteria suited to working animal tissue, and deep puncture wounds close over contaminated material before it can drain. Orr's medical team addressed this in treatment, but the infection risk was real and significant. He recovered. He continued hunting. He has spoken publicly about the attack on multiple occasions, consistently and without apparent embellishment. Incident analysis. Human failures. The first attack was not preventable in any meaningful way. Orr did everything right before the encounter, announced his presence, carried appropriate defensive tools, deployed spray at the correct moment. The sow charged anyway. A grizzly sow with cubs who decides to charge does not always respond to normal deterrence. That is not a human failure. What is worth examining is the firearm. A 10mm 1911 with a 6-inch barrel and a shoulder holster is not a quick-draw system. The gun was there. In a second charge that materialized within 10 feet at full speed, it was never accessible. That is a design problem, not an error of will. The pistol was secured by a snap strap on a holster with webbing, the kind of retention system built to prevent loss, not enable rapid access. Under the stress of a second charge from the same animal, within seconds of turning to face it, a snap strap shoulder holster does not solve the problem. Effective actions. Bear spray on the first charge was deployed correctly and at the right moment. It did not stop the charge, but it may have shortened the first attack. The sow departed rather than continuing. Playing dead, covering the neck and skull with arms while prone, minimized the injury profile in both attacks. Not running after the first attack was correct. Keeping forward motion toward the trailhead was correct. The self-rescue, 3 miles on 2 injured arms without stopping, was the decision that kept him alive long enough to receive treatment. Practical takeaway. If you carry a handgun for bear defense, the system that holds it to your body needs to allow you to draw it within 1 second in the dark, with an injured arm, with an animal on top of you. That is the test. If your holster doesn't pass that test, the gun is not a defense. It is a decision you've already made not to use it. In Yellowstone, just 2 years before Orr's attack, a man who had spent years walking those trails made one decision that eliminated every other option he had. Lance Crosby puts his arms up. The grizzly comes through them anyway. He is alone, 100 yards off the Elephant Back Loop Trail in a section of Yellowstone timber where the lodgepole grows close enough to block the afternoon light. His forearms show the defensive wounds when the ranger finds him. Both arms, the pattern of a man who raised his hands in the last seconds. The outcome of those seconds is already finished by the time anyone knows he is missing. He was 63 years old. He had worked as a medical professional inside Yellowstone for years, employed at one of the park's medical clinics. He knew these trails. He walked them regularly. Elephant Back is one of the more accessible backcountry routes in the Greater Lake Village area. A 2-mile loop that takes hikers through dense lodgepole forest to a ridge overlooking Yellowstone Lake. It is the kind of trail that experienced people walk without thinking twice. On August 7, 2015, a park ranger found Crosby's body roughly half a mile from the Elephant Back trailhead, in a section of off-trail timber. The female grizzly was still in the vicinity when the ranger arrived. Crosby had been alone. He had not been carrying bear spray. He had not told anyone where he was going or when to expect him back. He was found only because a search was organized after he failed to appear when expected. The bear was a female grizzly with at least 1 cub. DNA analysis confirmed her involvement. She was captured shortly after and euthanized on August 13th. The euthanasia decision was not automatic. Yellowstone's bear management team applies specific criteria when evaluating whether an attack warrants removal of the animal. The standard defensive attack by a sow protecting cubs, the most common type of grizzly encounter in the park, typically does not result in euthanasia if the human provoked the encounter and the bear did not seek out the confrontation. This case was evaluated differently. A significant portion of Crosby's body had been consumed and cached. The grizzly had returned to the body with the apparent intent to feed further. That changes the classification of the attack. A grizzly that consumes and caches a human victim is no longer in a defensive state. It has entered a feeding relationship with a human body. That animal represents a different category of risk. The 2 cubs were transferred to a facility accredited by the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. The sow was euthanized. The determination was that the attack had begun as a defensive encounter. A sow surprised at close range, possibly with the cub present, but had continued into predatory feeding behavior that wildlife managers considered disqualifying. The elephant back area is popular precisely because it appears manageable. The loop trail is well marked. The timber is dense, but the paths are clear. People walk it in trail runners and day packs. What the density of the lodgepole does, on the off-trail side, is reduce visibility to 15 or 20 feet in any direction. In that kind of cover, a 300-pound bear and a 63-year-old man can be within 1 stride of each other before either one knows the other is there. A sow with a cub in that situation does not deliberate. Crosby had defensive wounds on both forearms. He raised his arms in the last moment. That is not a failure of knowledge or preparation. That is a man trying to protect his face and throat when there was nothing else left to try. He knew what a grizzly attack looked like. He worked in the medical infrastructure that treated them. He understood, in that final moment, exactly what was happening to him. The wounds on his forearms say he tried. Medical findings and aftermath. The cause of death was confirmed as injuries from a grizzly bear attack. The defensive wound pattern on Crosby's forearms indicates that he was upright and responsive when the initial contact occurred. He raised his arms in a protective gesture, which is the appropriate passive defense posture. That he died despite this is consistent with the physics of the encounter. A grizzly sow, surprised at close range, with a cub present, delivers the initial strike with full force and full speed before any defense can be effective. The subsequent consumption and caching of the body means that a portion of his remains had been used as a food source before discovery. That fact is important for 2 reasons. First, it altered the bear management response. Second, it represents a physiological behavior, catching prey for later consumption, that is characteristic of predatory feeding, not defensive mauling. The initial attack may have been defensive. What followed was not. The broader pattern. Crosby was 63 and physically active. Alone in dense timber without bear spray, off-trail, without a check-in plan, in an area with documented grizzly activity. Any one of those factors would be manageable. Combined, they eliminated every layer of safety that exists between a person and this outcome. Incident analysis. Human failures, no bear spray. The Interagency Grizzly Bear Committee Board of Review found that Crosby was hiking in an area with known grizzly presence without any deterrent. Yellowstone National Park's own guidelines, the ones Crosby knew from his years at the medical clinic, state clearly that bear spray should be carried in grizzly habitat. He chose not to carry it. He also hiked alone. He also went off trail. He also had no check-in plan. Each of these was a choice made independently. Together, they produced a situation in which, when the encounter happened, there was nothing to change its outcome. Effective actions. Crosby raised his arms when the bear was on him. That is a documented protective behavior for grizzly attacks. Covering the back of the neck and skull gives the bear less to work with and protects the structures most vulnerable to fatal injury. That he was alone and had no other recourse does not make this meaningless. He responded with the appropriate instinct, even without equipment to back it up. Practical takeaway. Knowing the rules for bear country is not the same thing as following them. Lance Crosby worked inside Yellowstone. He understood the risk. He understood the terrain. He left without bear spray anyway. That gap between knowing and doing is where most of these incidents live. On the Kenai Peninsula in Alaska, another encounter in dense cover was about to go differently, because one man had a loaded handgun in his hand when a sow came through the brush 15 feet away. In June on the Kenai Peninsula, the light doesn't fail the way it does in the lower 48. At 8 p.m., the spruce are still lit from the side, long shadows thrown across the undergrowth, the air carrying the layered smell of wet grass and cottonwood. In the Kenai National Wildlife Refuge, north of the Sterling Highway, the brush grows thick enough off-trail that 20 feet of visibility is generous. There are about 500,000 acres of that. Some of it you can walk. Some of it walks into you. Nicholas Abraham was 34 years old, from Sterling, Alaska. He knew this country. On the evening of June 10, 2023, he was rabbit hunting a mile north of mile 73.5 of the Sterling Highway, just inside the refuge, past the west entrance to Skylac Lake Road. He was carrying a .44 caliber handgun. He was alone. He was moving through thick cover at 8:15 in the evening when he became aware of the sow. She was 15 feet away. That was also when she became aware of him. She was on him immediately after he became aware of her. That is the language from the Alaska wildlife troopers who investigated the scene. Not, she charged when he got too close. Not, she reacted. She was on him. The distinction matters. A 15-foot gap between a brown bear sow with 2 cubs and a human who just appeared in her space closes before a human nervous system can process the threat and generate a motor response. This is not a failure of human alertness. It is a consequence of brush density and the way brown bears move through it. Abraham was mauled. He went down under the contact, absorbed the initial bites, and got the .44 out. He shot the sow. She was dead at the scene. Alaska wildlife troopers confirmed the kill when they arrived at the location that evening. Abraham was treated for injuries at a Kenai Peninsula hospital. The troopers' dispatch describes them as minor. That word does not capture what it means to be mauled by a brown bear at close range, but it does mean that he walked out, transported himself or was transported with his wounds, and received treatment without life-threatening emergency. In a bear encounter where contact is made, that is the functional definition of the system working. The 2 cubs were not found when troopers investigated the scene. Brown bear cubs in the 1st or 2nd year of life who lose their mother face a grim statistical outcome in the wild. The state of Alaska legally requires that any bear killed in self-defense, this is lawful in Alaska when the attack is not provoked, must be reported, and the hide and skull surrendered to Alaska Fish and Game. Abraham was required to comply with those conditions, and did so. It is legal to shoot a bear in Alaska in self-defense. What is required is that the shooter did not provoke the attack and did not behave negligently, leaving food out, for example, in a way that attracted the animal. Abraham was hunting rabbits a mile into federal refuge land in thick cover. He encountered a sow with cubs in a low-visibility setting. There is no reasonable interpretation of the available facts that describes that as provocation. What this case illustrates is not particularly complicated. A man with a loaded handgun he could access under contact survived a close-range brown bear encounter. The gun was the difference. Not the only factor. The will to deploy it while being mauled is not a given, but the terminal factor. The encounter ended when the sow was shot, not before. Medical findings and aftermath. The available primary source reporting characterizes Abraham's injuries as minor. The standard language used in Alaska trooper dispatches for injuries that do not require immediate life-saving intervention. Brown bear bites and claw strikes in brief contact scenarios typically produce lacerations, puncture wounds, and possible fractures to the extremities, with the depth and severity dependent on how quickly the attack is broken off. Abraham apparently drew and fired during the mauling. The attack ended with the sow's death, which means the duration of contact was shortened by the defensive action. The infection risk from brown bear mauling wounds is substantial regardless of injury severity. Brown bear paws are in contact with carrion, fish, and soil continuously, and their mouths carry a comparable bacterial load. Wounds that appear superficial at the scene can become serious within 48 hours without proper debridement and antibiotic treatment. Abraham received hospital care, which would have addressed this. There is no documented account of lasting physical limitation from the available reporting. Incident analysis: human failures. Working alone in thick cover in brown bear country is a risk factor that is hard to eliminate in small game hunting contexts. The Kenai Peninsula's dense brush does not present a safer alternative trail network. Abraham was doing what Alaskans with local knowledge routinely do. The 15-foot encounter was a function of visibility and terrain, not an error of judgment. Effective actions. The firearm was accessible, loaded, and deployed under the worst possible conditions, during active contact with a 300-plus pound animal. Drawing and firing a handgun while being mauled requires physical function that a bear attack actively compromises. That Abraham was able to do it, and do it effectively, reflects both preparation and a specific kind of composure. The gun was also a caliber appropriate for the task. A .44 handgun at contact range against a brown bear represents a meaningful defensive tool, not a gesture. The sow died at the scene. The system worked. Practical takeaway. In Alaskan bear country, a firearm is only a defense if it is in your hand or in a holster you can reach with an injured arm, in the dark, with an animal on you. Abraham's system worked. That outcome should be studied as carefully as the incidents where it didn't. But the most remote encounter in this batch didn't happen in Montana or Alaska or New Jersey. It happened on an island north of Norway at the edge of a glacier, inside a tent in the middle of the night, where 13 students from Britain discovered that a starving polar bear moves in silence across snow that no one was watching. Horatio Chapple is in his sleeping bag when the polar bear enters the tent. Somewhere in the camp, another student wakes to the sound and reaches for a rifle that is supposed to be by the door. The bear is already inside. Chapple is 17 years old, and the next few minutes will define everything that follows. What is lost, what survives, and what changes about the way the British Schools Exploring Society runs expeditions into the Arctic. He does not survive the next few minutes. It was August 5th, 2011, on the island of Spitsbergen in the Norwegian archipelago of Svalbard, approximately 40 kilometers from the settlement of Longyearbyen and 78 degrees north of the equator. The expedition was organized by the British Schools Exploring Society, a program with a long history of sending young people into remote wilderness environments as educational expeditions. This group numbered 13 students and leaders. They had made camp near the Von Post Glacier, a wide, flat stretch of glacial moraine and tundra between the ice and the fjord, the kind of terrain that looks empty because most of it is. The polar bear was described by investigators and witnesses as emaciated, starving, its coat in poor condition. This matters for the same reason it always matters in predatory bear attacks. A well-fed animal in stable territory has limited motivation to approach a human camp. An animal in nutritional deficit has a different calculation. It had been moving across the snow and tundra toward the camp, and the camp's perimeter alarm, a wire system designed to alert occupants to approaching bears, either failed to activate in time or was not responded to quickly enough before contact was made. The bear went for the tents. Horatio Chapple was killed. 4 other students were injured, 3 of them seriously. Patrick Flinders, then 16 years old, survived the attack but required emergency surgery in Norway to remove a tooth that the polar bear had left in his skull. He later described fighting back, trying to gouge the animal's eyes during the attack. The mechanics of that response are not nothing. A polar bear that is mauling a human in close contact at night is not something a 16-year-old is trained to handle. The fact that he responded physically, that he did not go limp, may have contributed to the bear's decision to break off that portion of the attack. The expedition leader, Michael Reed, shot and killed the bear. The rifle was there. The round was in the chamber. It was fired when it needed to be fired. Polar bears in the Svalbard archipelago occupy a specific ecological position. The archipelago is administered by Norway, and Svalbard sees a significant amount of expedition and tourism activity in its outer reaches each year. The regulation framework for armed bears guards, a requirement for anyone venturing outside settlements, exists because this is not a theoretical risk. It is a documented, recurring one. The ice that historically kept polar bears further offshore has been receding for decades. A bear that cannot hunt seals from stable sea ice is a bear that is increasingly on shore, increasingly hungry, and increasingly likely to encounter human camps. The 2011 expedition had a perimeter alarm. They had a rifle. They had a leader who used the rifle effectively once the situation was beyond containment. What they did not have was a response fast enough to prevent the bear from reaching a tent before anyone could act. 32 feet per second. That is approximately the top speed of a charging polar bear on land. A camp perimeter alarm that triggers when the bear is 20 meters away gives everyone inside approximately 2 to 3 seconds to respond. A young person asleep at midnight in an Arctic expedition camp, in a sleeping bag, in a tent with zipper closures, cannot get a rifle from a different location in 2 to 3 seconds. The physics are not on their side. The 4 injured students were airlifted to Tromsø on mainland Norway for treatment. Flinders underwent surgery. All 4 survived. Medical findings and aftermath. Horatio Chapple was 17 years old. The cause of death was the direct injuries from the polar bear attack while he was inside his tent. Bites and claw strikes to the head and torso in an enclosed space where there was no ability to play dead, create distance, or deploy deterrence. Polar bears at close range and full force represent one of the highest energy impact events in any predator attack on humans. Adult males can reach 900 to 1,500 pounds, and females range from 330 to 650 pounds. The sex and weight of the Svalbard bear were not definitively documented in available reporting, but given its emaciated condition, it was likely a subadult or a female at reduced body weight. It struck with enough force to cause fatal injuries and to embed a tooth in the skull of a second victim. Patrick Flinders survived emergency surgery in Norway. The remaining injured students received treatment and were repatriated to the United Kingdom after medical clearance. The psychological aftermath of a nighttime attack of this nature on a group of teenagers, many of whom witnessed the attack and its consequences, falls outside what standard expedition medical planning addresses. The British Schools Exploring Society subsequently reviewed its Arctic protocols. In the years following Horatio's death, his family and supporters raised over £250,000 to create Horatio's Garden, an outdoor space for patients at the Duke of Cornwall Spinal Treatment Center in Salisbury, where his father worked as a surgeon. The garden treats the people his son had wanted to spend his life treating. He had planned to study medicine. Incident analysis. Human failures. The perimeter alarm system did not produce a response fast enough to prevent contact. Whether that is a failure of the alarm's design, its placement, or the response protocols in place for when it triggered is something that expedition reviews would have assessed. But the outcome was a bear in a tent before anyone with a rifle was between the camp and the animal. The rifle reached the scene after the attack had begun. In polar bear country, that timeline is the measure of whether the system worked. The broader structural failure is that an emaciated polar bear moving toward an occupied camp over flat, open tundra at night was not detected and stopped at the perimeter. A rifle that is not in the hands of a person actively watching the perimeter is a rifle that will arrive late. Effective actions. Michael Reed, the expedition leader, shot and killed the bear once he reached the scene with the rifle. That action ended the attack on the remaining students. Patrick Flinders fought back physically against the animal during his own portion of the attack. The active resistance of a victim, counterattacking rather than going limp, is not universally the correct response and is specifically contraindicated for grizzly bear attacks. Against a predatory polar bear at night in a tent, with no other options, it may have shortened the duration of contact. That is speculation. What is documented is that Flinders survived. Practical takeaway. In polar bear country, the rifle and the person watching the perimeter need to be the same person. The animal does not negotiate time between the alarm and the response. On Svalbard, the rifle is nearby is not the same as the rifle is ready. Horatio Chapple spent his last night in a camp where those two things were not the same. And the distance between them was not measured in feet. It was measured in seconds. The pattern across these 6 cases is not complicated. Equipment that is not on your body is not a defense. A firearm without a round in the chamber, a canister on a bicycle, a rifle in a different tent. These are objects. The distance between an object and a tool is measured in seconds. In every case in this video, the seconds ran out before the distance closed. In one of them, they didn't. Because one man had a loaded .44 in his hand when a brown bear came through the brush at 15 feet. That is the only variable worth studying. Not the bears, the gap between preparation and readiness. If this kind of analysis is useful to you, subscribe. There will be more. Stay safe out there.
Hey, we need your help. If you've loved these terrifying true stories so far, we need your help to keep sharing them and create new episodes every week. Please grab your phone, scan the QR code now, and tap the subscribe button that opens on your screen.